Well, we did have a slightly weaker lead from Wall Street. Let's call it soggy more than weak. And let's take a look at the markets that are open in Asia at this hour and see whether or not they're grabbing that lead and running with it. Not necessarily. In fact, the Kospi and the New Zealand market are still in positive territory. The Australian market just slightly weaker, along with Japan. Now, of course, the Chinese markets are off. They're off celebrating the 60th anniversary of the People's Republic. Looking at them year to date, let's take a look at the Shanghai Composite Index first up, over 52%. Let's call it 53 for fun. The Shenzhen Composite Index actually better year to date, up by nearly 72%. Of course, everyone wants to know what's going to happen in the future. The past is not necessarily a good indicator of that. So let's get at least the one view on the future of the Chinese markets with Kirk West, Managing Director, Principal Global Investors. And today he joins us live from New York. And staying with us, of course, is still Jim Rogers, Chairman of Rogers Holdings. Roger and Kirk, thank you very much for staying with us. Kirk, what do you think? From here, where do the Chinese markets go?
Well, you're right, Mandy. I mean, it's up over 50% year to date. In fact, it's up over 50% over 3 years. So by anyone's reckoning, it's had a very good performance. So, I mean, long term, we remain very constructive on the Chinese market. But I think it's quite likely that we're going to go through a period of consolidation now and maybe some heightened volatility.
Yeah, Kirk, I've got to ask you here. I mean, recovery a lot faster and stronger than we expected happening in China. Because of stimulus, a lot of the stimulus leaked out over into hard assets, so into, let's say, bricks and mortar property, also into stocks. This wealth effect, is this going to give people even more money to pump back into stocks?
Oh, look, I mean, you're right. One of the problems, of course, in China is investors have a very limited number of options. It's really bank deposits or stocks, and that's one of the reasons you see such volatility in the market. So I think, yes, it's quite likely that, you will see further flows into stocks, and that I think will just create more volatility over the near term.
Kirk, I was reading something by Jim O'Neill, Goldman's chief economist and big China bull, about the equity markets. He was recommending buying shares of the global companies selling to the Chinese consumers as opposed to equities on the mainland. What do you make about that strategy?
Well, I agree with him in that sense. I think it's going to become a real stock pickers market. And on a longer term view, I can understand and agree with his analysis. On a more short to medium term view, though, I'd be probably sticking with stocks more exposed to domestic consumption and the infrastructure story.
Well, Sri and Kirk, too, the way I'm playing China, buying companies outside of China that sell to China is one thing, but they're more dependent on their own markets. I'd rather buy companies in China. China has plenty of problems. It's got a water problem. It's got an infrastructure problem. It's got an agricultural problem. There are plenty of ways to invest in China to make a lot of money, if you ask me. I'm not sure I would buy right now, given that the market doubled in the last 9 or 10 months. But over the next few years, it's going to be great.
Yeah, Kirk, what do you think about those
Jim,
teams?
which companies in particular?
Well, Mandy,
sorry, can I just pin you down there, Jim? Which companies in particular?
Well, Mandy, there are lots of companies that deal with the water problem in China. Some of them trade in Singapore, some in Hong Kong, some in China itself. I'd rather than get into a long list, let me just name the sectors, and people should find their own.
You can't say like your top 3.
I don't have a top 3. I don't have a top 3. I own like 10 or 12 in water treatment alone.
Okay, we're going to get back to both of you in just a second and continue this fun conversation. Kirk West is that Managing Director, Principal Global Investors, and Jim Rogers, Chairman of Rogers Holdings.